Well, 2311 and Front Row Motorsports have not only not signed the 2025 charter agreement for NASCAR this coming season, but now they have filed a lawsuit. We saw that report out earlier today. It is Wednesday right now, and so we have reached out to the attorney of that case to provide a little bit more information for fans out there to understand this just a little bit more and explain that lawsuit so that we all can understand it. All right, well, now we have found the lawyer. Shout out to our producer, Colby Bass, for this, finding the attorney of this lawsuit that Front Row Motorsports and 2311 have initiated against NASCAR and Jim France. We have Jeffrey Kessler joining us now. And Jeffrey, I guess for an overview for fans out there that are listening, that are maybe familiar with the charter system and kind of the negotiations that have been going on for a couple of years now, I'm just curious if you can kind of explain this lawsuit, maybe just in the simplest terms that everybody can understand.
So nice to meet you, caller. Thanks for having me. This is an antitrust case. An antitrust case is a case which argues that the rules of competition are being violated. We have antitrust laws that regulate competition. What we are arguing here is that NASCAR is a monopoly. No surprise to NASCAR fans, there is no alternative to NASCAR, not just in this country, but frankly around the world. And it got its monopoly illegally. And the reason it got it illegally is because it tied up all the racetracks in the country, because it doesn't let any of the teams compete for any other racing circuit, because it seizes the intellectual property of the next gen cars so that those are locked in to NASCAR. And it engages in all of these restrictions so that the teams have no one else to deal with and the fans have no one else to deal with. What NASCAR then did, because it's run basically as the private enterprise of the France family to benefit them, is use that monopoly to force terms, economic terms on the teams that they barely can afford to be in NASCAR. In 2016, they started what's called a charter system, where the teams could pay millions of dollars to have the right to compete. There were 15 teams in 2016. 9 of them were already out of business and had to be replaced because they can't afford to put in tens of millions of dollars a year into these teams and pay the drivers. And all the money goes to the France family, right? That's how NASCAR is run. So the teams can barely make it, and the drivers make even less because they're just getting a piece of what the teams get. So something had to change. On September 6th, NASCAR, using its monopoly, went to all the teams at 5 o'clock and said, here's a 100-page agreement. Either accept it by 6 or you cannot have a charter to compete. Most of the teams folded because they couldn't afford to fight NASCAR. They couldn't risk their franchise. They couldn't risk their employees. 2 teams, my clients, did not fold. That's Front Row, and that's 2311. They decided somebody has got to stand up to this bully. Somebody has got to say enough is enough, and that they are going to file this lawsuit so that NASCAR could come into the 21st century and give these teams and drivers a fair economic chance to match the fact that NASCAR fans do not go to see these races to watch Jim France. They go to watch these races for these teams and these drivers. So that's basically what this is about.
So why do you think just Front Row and 2311 were the only two teams to do that? You mentioned money being an issue, but there were some other top level teams that also, I guess, assumingly so, signed this agreement.
So not everybody's got the courage to stand up to a bully. I've done these fights at college. I've done these fights in the NFL. I've done these fights in the NBA. Okay. Not everybody will stand up, right? Not everybody will take the pressure. Not everybody will take the risk. Some people will go along in scraps. Okay. 2311 and Front Row have had enough. Somebody has to say, this is enough. That's what they've done.
You mentioned working with the NBA and some other leagues out there. How does this what NASCAR does, how does that compare to the traditional franchise model?
So it's a very different model. And we're not saying create that model for NASCAR. NASCAR has to have its own model. But what's common is the history has been a group within the sports trying to keep all of the economics for themselves and not sharing it with others and restraining competition so you don't get the benefits of competition in your market. That's common. And each of these sports have gone through a period, a transformation moment, where they had to decide either we're going to change and be part of that change, or the courts are going to require us to change. That's where NASCAR is right now, right? They either have the opportunity to sit down and work collaboratively to try to agree on a settlement and create a new system that will benefit everyone to be fair, or the courts are going to do it for them. And that's what we're going to find out.
How does this lawsuit aim to make NASCAR more competitive? Because I just listening to even guys like Denny Hamlin talk about, on his podcast, Actions Detrimental, he's talking about wanting to do this for the longevity of NASCAR, to make it better in the long run. So how will this lawsuit possibly help that?
So it's like any business, right? We probably have a lot of small business owners out there listening. People can understand this. If you're going to invest money in your business to make a better product, to grow the business, okay, there has to be some prospect. No guarantee of success. No one has a guarantee of success. But if you do a good job and you are successful, you've got to be able to have a chance to earn some kind of fair return on your investment. Otherwise, nobody's going to invest in this. That's why all those teams are gone from NASCAR. That's why a NASCAR charter will be sold now for maybe one multiple, like 1 times revenue or less. Okay? When you go sell an NBA team, you're selling it for 11 times your revenue, right? Because there's an opportunity to actually get a return. NASCAR will not survive. It will not grow. It will not develop if you do not allow the teams a fair opportunity to realize on their investment. Because without the teams, there is no NASCAR. 70 years ago, maybe you could run a team, I don't know, for $10,000 or $20,000 a year. That's not how NASCAR works today, right? You need $18 million on average to just put one car out there in terms of that. Okay? You got to be able to earn a return in that. And it's not like the money's not there. The new TV deal is worth more than $1 billion a year, right? It's a huge amount of money, but it's not going to teams. That's the problem.
We hear the term monopoly used a lot with NASCAR, and especially around this antitrust lawsuit. In what ways are they exercising monopoly?
Well, the most dramatic way they're exercising it is this take it or leave it negotiating with the teams, right? Because they can know when they go to the teams, they can say, as they did on September 6th, either you accept this really bad deal, which gives all the economics to us, and you just deal with it, or go find your own racetracks, right? Where are you going to go compete? right? How are you going to exist, right? That's monopoly power. That's what the antitrust laws are designed to prohibit and prevent, that kind of abuse.
When you take a look back at the 2016 charter agreement that was there in place before, what part of that agreement do you think was maybe the most harmful to teams and to the sport?
So it's not any one part, it's the whole part, right? It's the fact that looking like all the terms together did not give these teams an opportunity to be able to make the investments necessary to survive and thrive. I mean, you could say, it's not about, it's just like the television revenue split is bad or the governance provision is bad. You need the whole deal. They're complicated deals to be a fair set of terms. That was never NASCAR's objective. Because again, the way the France family has run NASCAR, it's not like we don't have to be fair. We have a monopoly. We'll just decide what's good for us. We'll give the bare minimum we need so that we'll have these teams, willing to basically fold and take it. And we'll just go forward and run it for us, right? In 2015, the Forbes estimated the France family was worth over $5 billion. Well, that was 2015. It's going to be a bigger number today by a lot.
Can you go into a little bit too of what the 2025 charter agreement is and maybe the antitrust release provision in that of why you think the new agreement is also illegal?
Right. Well, so I'll talk about the release provision. That's really interesting. So one of their tickets is if you want to compete in our charter for going forward, you have to give up all your legal claims. Right? So like you basically have to, you have to give up, submit, and don't keep punching, right? The bully, you just got to lay down, right? And take it. And so one of the things we are seeking in this lawsuit is what's called a preliminary injunction, which is going to be an early order by the court that'll be issued in the next month or two that will say you cannot enforce that, so we can just go forward and compete with charters, and we'll continue. We'll take this to trial. We'll litigate this as being there, but we can't. You can't make the ticket for us going forward, being that you give up the right to fight in the first place. So that's going to be the first issue that's going to get decided in this case.
You're very well versed in this. Obviously, it's a big case that could potentially change just the trajectory of this sport. How confident are you in the case right now?
So I don't bring cases I don't believe in. Okay. No case has 100% chance of success. So, we can't be certain, but we are confident. We believe this is an antitrust violation. We believe we will prevail. It may take time. Antitrust cases don't happen in a day. I suspect it'll be a year or more before we get to a trial. But we're willing, or my clients are willing, to make that effort to take that fight to the end. When I had my antitrust fight with the NCAA, which is still going on for the athletes, some people may be college sports fans, all the changes going on now in college sports is in all litigation. We carried on that fight for 10 years to get the NCAA to change, and it's happening now. But, so sometimes it takes a long time, but it will happen. It's more a question, not when. It may be a question of when, but it's not a question of if.
So it could be 10 years.
Well, no, I don't think so.
You don't think
so? This one, I think we will get to trial at least within a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. We will get to trial.
So what does this mean for the ability of 2311 and Front Row Motorsports to compete in 2025? What's that look like for those teams?
They are both determined they will compete no matter what, right? It determines how they will be able to compete. If we get our injunction, they'll be able to take charters and compete as a charter team. If they don't get the injunction, they will have to compete as open teams next year, but they will be there no matter what. They're not giving up on NASCAR, at least for next year. I don't know. I don't know how long you can keep competing as an open team, but the idea would be for some time they can do that, and they will at least go out trying to do that next year to start. But we hope it doesn't come to that. We expect that we have a good chance of getting our injunction, and then they will just compete as charter teams.